kind of an awkward question to start with, but you lost your mother when you were in the midst of recording.
Oh, right. Of the Horoscope album.
The Horoscope.
Which was the album after the last tour. That was 4 years ago. I started recording straight after the tour was finished. I spent 2 or 3 months actually editing the film of the tour first, and as soon as that was complete, then went into recording. And yeah, it was like 3 years. Took a very long time. Didn't quite finish it. It's very nearly completed, that album, and in July I'm going to go back to work on it. But yes, that was quite a difficult thing for me, because I was very close to my parents, and I remember my dad died in '84, so I was kind of, I suppose, prepared for it, what it would be like. But grief is a terrible thing, that sort of loss of people who are close to you, and it's only time that really heals it. And you, for a while, you're really sort of angry that they aren't there physically, you know, anymore. But the spiritual presence of them actually gets stronger after the flu. That's the sort of my discovery that I found. Yeah.
When それは市川がロンドンでやってみたの別の人が There was a, I guess, a correspondent from this magazine, Rocking On, who interviewed you in London.
Oh, right.
And you had said at the time that that album had become rather introspective and personal.
Yes.
It's I guess it was because of that particular tragedy.
I think that was part of it. Certainly, maybe it had started off that way. I'm not really sure. With my work, see, it's always the when I'm doing my own songs, they're usually instrumental for most of their life, you know, so they're kind of abstract pieces, really. And the way I was working was, oh, sorry, I'll close the door. I was working on a 56-track desk and a 32-track digital and a 24-track analog running together. So we were hoping we were going to get the best of all worlds, and that way having the warmth of analog and yet having the clarity of bouncing things around and not getting any degeneration through the digital thing, Mitsubishi. And it meant I was never singing the songs. 56 tracks means it had almost an infinite number of possibilities. You know, I kept recording, adding things to it in this sort of, I don't know, quest for something different. You know, something that would really sound special to me. So yeah, I suppose the lyric thing came later and later. So this is what I was finding throughout the 80s, actually, getting lost in the technology like a lot of people did, I think. Working in too big of a format. With Taxi I went back to 24-track analog, which was great. It really suited me and suited the project very well. And that's how I'm going to work in the future. I'm back to basics.
So getting lost in technology, I threw you off as much as the personal tragedy.
That's right. It was a combination of those things. That's right.
How about the lyrical content of the Horoscope stuff? Is that very introspective and
yes, yes, it is. Yeah, it is. But there are actually still 2 or 3 tracks incomplete lyrically, so perhaps it will have more of an upside when I get around to finishing. When the promotion tour finishes, which with about another month to do it. I'm going to resume work. I didn't listen to the Horoscope tracks for a year. I put it aside completely when I did this record, and listened to it 3 weeks ago, and I liked it very much. I think it has. I'm glad I did that I did leave it for a while. It gave me this kind of luxury, I suppose, of perspective of time, you know, to get sort of focused on it again. And so yeah, I think it was the right move to do. And doing this record really gave me, doing Taxi, it gave me a lot more confidence in my ability to do something quickly again, you know. We did it from start to finish in 5 months or something. Extraordinary. We've been promoting it since December.
It's probably the quickest you've made an album
for a long time.
How many years? Maybe since the 70s.
Oh, definitely, yeah. It was after Avalon that we started working 48 track, and then obviously 56 track. And you immediately kind of, you know, by doubling up, you double up the possibilities of what you can do, and it doubles the time, doubles the cost, everything, doubles the pressure. Therefore, I'm getting a single which will be friendly to radio, and it's not the way to make records, I think, to make music. So another thing that I did was, I don't know, during the 70s, you see, I was always doing albums like this, like these were seen for the first one in '73, and I remember then that kind of cleared my head, you know. I don't know if that's the reason I managed to do 3 albums in that year, but '73 was an incredibly prolific year for me. I did For Your Pleasure, and then Foolish Things, and Stranded straight after, and I hope this will have the same effect. After the Avalon album, I stopped doing old songs, covers, whatever you want to call them, and I think that's a mistake, really. I think it was very good for my output as a writer. It took the pressure off my writing, in a way. And during the 80s, I seemed to be constantly trying to write the masterpiece, you know, that kind of thing, which is obviously putting too much pressure on yourself in that department. Because I love making records, you see, and yet I was finding the songwriting process was taking longer and longer and longer. Partly because of this technology thing, that I'd wait till I'd sort of filled out all the tracks, so, you know, say 42 tracks or something, and then I'd say, oh, I better leave a few tracks for singing, well, it's time to sing now. And doing these sort of records of other people's songs means I can sing the song on day one, which I did on 2 or 3 of the tracks. Spell on You, Will You Love Me Tomorrow, Go My Best Friend. They were all the first take of the vocal, done in my little demo studio, which is so radically different from what I had been doing, working in these 2 huge studios in London, which were the only ones that I think had desks big enough to take the system. But we will hopefully learn from our mistakes.
Did you ever come to a point where you become so encumbered by the technology and recording process that you felt you were at the end of the line, that maybe you had at long last dried up and reached your limit?
Lyrically, yes, but not musically. No, because the irony of Horoscope is that I was trying to do it very, very quickly, and the music came very fast. The music side of it. within a matter of months I had a whole kind of album's worth of musical material. We had a disaster which happened early on with the computer went down and the copy discs had been scrambled, and because I was doing all the keyboards into a MIDI thing into a computer, which worked very well. And I didn't trust the computer. I kept saying to the programmer, "Are you sure this is safe?" And he said, "Yeah, back it up every night." And one day I came in and he looked so sad. And two of the songs had just been completely lost, except I had a cassette on DAT, actually, DAT. So it was a kind of good quality cassette of what they sounded like. And we spent months actually recreating note by note, because I really liked what I played, and to try and recreate something which was intuitive and like, it's it's a real head scramble. So that was one disaster that we had with technology.
Very sort of telling incident, because it's really a high-tech nightmare.
Yeah. But lyrically, drawing up is a problem, I think, for people as they write more and more songs. That you kind of feel, am I repeating myself? Have I said this before? Novelists and all of them.
以前なんかかなり以前にインタビューでインタビューに受けるのが嫌だとか、あと自分の作品を取り上げて話することがなんかすごく不安だったりして苦しいっていうふうに言われてたんですけど、これは今も変わらないんですかね。
In the past, you had a certain distaste for interviews, for talking about music you made. You've gotten over that, or are you able to look at that in retrospect and sort of detach yourself from that?
Oh, I think that no, it isn't so bad. Maybe it's because I have so long in between interview sessions. Only like 4 years since I was really doing the rounds of publicity. It's actually quite nice to get around, see people, because you tend to see people again and again, almost like friends all over the world in a sense. So I'm not so uptight about it as I used to be. The repetition can be kind of very wearing, of course, which I think because obviously there's a limit to how many questions you can ask,
It's going to be about the same 15 or 20.
Yeah. So no, I'm much more relaxed about the interview process.
Was there more
photographs? I'm never particularly happy about doing that. That is one thing I'm not that keen on usually.
今日は前々からちょっと思ってたこと聞きたいことがあるんですけど、ロキシにせよ、ソロにせよ、その人の書く曲なり作品なりっていうのは、いつもその時の自分の状態だったりとか、起きた出来事だったりとか、そうしたものがすごく作品に反映されているように思うんですけど、そういう自覚はあるんでしょうか。
Your music seems to have always been
Are you sure?
More teas, coffees, etc.
Good enough. Your music has always seemed to be a reflection of your personal life, what's happened around you. Is that something you've always been conscious of, to feature pages from your private life?
Well, it goes in there, I think, but then sometimes it can be something that you read in a newspaper or a magazine or a movie or something like that, which can trigger off an idea, and then I suppose so it's not only your own experience, it's kind of sometimes second-hand experience as well, all mixed up together. And imagination is very important, of course, you know. But the songs I do tend to be kind of more kind of personal kind of thing. Over the years, they've gotten more and more, I think, more and more abstract. So sometimes they're this kind of like mood colorations, or, you know, become rather picturesque mood things, which I quite like that. But it means then that those sort of things are sometimes too vague for commercial accessibility, if you like, you know, which is why doing other people's songs, which are generally more direct, down to earth, and straightforward, is a good way of touching your audience in a more direct way, you know. So that's another reason why I like doing interpretive work as well.
I would imagine a lot of people don't even think about your lyrics though when they listen to music.
Well, you're probably right, you know, you're probably right. And it's just to get a sense of it. I don't know, you worry about them, you agonize over them when you're doing it yourself.
I mean, it's usually a word or two sort of captures a mood.
That's right.
Mind, like
that's
Avalon or something, or
right.
Mother of Pearl.
You
sit down and look at the lyrics, so you kind of think, what does this all mean?
Yeah.
So I guess people are perceiving it at different levels.
That's right. But I'm sure you're right that people don't necessarily sort of study the lyrics in the same way that I would. While the number of trees I must have wasted, like, you know.
Yeah, you agonize over it, but I'm sure it's instinctively something you're satisfied with. You don't logically figure it out. It's just when you're finished.
Oh, when you get it right.
Yeah.
Think, oh yeah, this works. This is helping the music.
Yeah.
And I think over the years, the musical side of it was becoming so refined when I was working. To find lyrics that would enhance that mood or kind of improve it even. Instrumentally, it was kind of getting more and more difficult. You see what I mean? Like, they were becoming so complex musically, instrumentally, that there was no way I was going to find the right lyric that would work totally with what was there. They were really becoming more almost instrumental albums. Yeah, it's interesting.
It seems to be your entire approach to the music, sort of, it can be defined in moods. Like, you know, we were just talking about the lyrics there, a word or two defining the mood. The album itself will have a cover art that sort of sets the mood, which, you know, is true to a certain degree of most artists, but it seems that in your case, it's a bit more, the moods are a bit more vivid, a bit more, I guess they come at the fan, the listener, a little more strongly than other artists do. That's an apt observation.
Well, I'm very pleased. Because, how much I talk about the covers, the artwork, and that kind of thing.
Virtually everything
being integrated. Yeah, I think that's one of the interesting things I found. I think to direct the artwork, which is what I do. Obviously, I always work with photographers as well, and it's a teamwork thing. It's my taste that puts a stamp on it, and I'm sure that helps to. You just try and try and enhance the music with the presentation of it. Just as you would, I suppose, with a stage show as well. And now, of course, with videos, you try to do that. That's kind of more difficult. I find that very difficult to get the right mood on film. is quite a tricky thing. I think that I'm a very emotional person, and when I'm in the studio, it's always quite well. You don't have to be too serious about it. Like we have like a lot of fun working on them as well, but it's they're usually very moody pieces, and I think I like that kind of music when it kind of is like deep. And it was great on this album working with Robin Trower, because I'd been trying to produce myself, for, well, I suppose all my records, from day one, I've been certainly the co-producer, I've been the director, if you like, of what I wanted the music to sound like. But in the 80s I was working perhaps too much on my own, without having a strong co-producer. I had Brett Davis, but he was like the engineer, and usually he's got too much. I think I was one person short. Somebody like Brian Eno would have been very useful, for instance, or Chris Thomas. They're both kind of people I've worked with very successfully in that capacity. So this time, Robin Trower, who had come to play on Horoscope as a visiting guitar player, because I love the guitar as an instrument, and I collect guitarists around me. I love having different combinations of that instrument. It fascinates me really, and he really enjoyed himself, and because it's not so, he'd never really been a session player at all, but he said he'd always fancied working with me, and it was just a kind of lucky call really, and he stayed on to help with the production anyway, and it was good because he got me to play more than I had been doing. He encouraged me to do it on this record, although I had been playing a lot, of course, on Horoscope, again, more so than I had for a long, long time, and it makes the record sound more like one of mine if I play a lot of the keyboards. That it was the way into the songs, because you say, you sit there and you go, okay, Spell on You, that's the tune, that's the note, and piano is my way in to this, and just play around and around till you find some way, the right tempo and the right rhythm, and then you start maybe changing the melody a bit, maybe doing a harmony to it or something, whatever. Very interesting. So yeah.
So he was keen.
So he was keen for me to push myself forward. On other solo albums, sometimes I'd pulled back too much. So after you, old chap, kind of, because you're hiring all these great players, and I would tend to shrink back a bit and say, well, how can I possibly share the same tape as you? I would do little bits, but not enough, I think. Not enough. And so Robin really encouraged me to kind of push myself forward a bit, which ironically makes it more of a kind of Roxy-ish sounding record. Because on the Roxy albums, obviously, I would play an awful lot. I would play a lot on those.
無動的なところで言うと、例えばプライベートが盛り上がっている時には、例えばサイレンだったり、アバンだったり、地味なマイクだったりとか、そういうすごく幸せそうなアルバムになり、プライベートがそうじゃない場合は、ザ・ブライス・ベイルとか、ああいう感じでヘビーなのがあったりとか、そういう起伏が聴いてる人間に非常に上がりやすいっていうのが特徴だと思うんですけど。
One other thing that seems to characterize your work is this gets back to what we were talking about, how maybe the private side of your life manifests itself in your music. There are albums like Siren or Avalon, In Your Mind, that are very positive and sort of reflect a very happy state of affairs. Maybe at the time that's the way you felt, whereas there are other albums,
Bright Street Bear.
Bright Street Bear, yes.
Bright Street Bear.
That was a character, that one.
They seem to very vividly reflect
turbulence.
Turbulence in your life, exactly.
Yeah, yes.
So
well, I think that's what you're there to do, you know, to lay yourself bare. There's what the artist does, you know, it's what the job. You know, it's like, you know, somebody's got to do it. It's like, but no, I think that's par for the course, and it's a very emotional kind of activity. But yeah, it's just, I don't really question it. It's just what you do, you know.
Do you think it's more true of you than say other artists?
I don't know. I think I'm very passionate about it. Perhaps I can't say I'm more than anybody else, but the people that I was always drawn to as a fan, you know, Billie Holiday, Charlie Parker, they all had really kind of, you know, messed up lives, you know, and but created incredible beauty from the chaos surrounding them, you know. So those are my kind of role models, or people I've always felt, oh yeah, I love this, you know. It's like, I was like a very big fan of that kind of, I suppose, music that has a sort of sadness to it, really, as well. But it's there's a beautiful quality to it as well. That stark, bleak kind of beauty about their kind of haunting thing, which I like very much. But yeah, you just try and express your feelings, whether it's your own song or somebody else's song. It doesn't really matter much to me. You see, with these people I was talking about, and they weren't really composers much, but they could reinvent any of the songs that they touched, you know, by the strength of the full force of their personality, you know, and skill, artistry, timing, phrasing, and ability to dig deep into their I don't know, into that emotional thing, you know. And I think it's quite a challenge sometimes with some of these songs. So, obviously you don't really do a song unless you have some feeling for it or some attraction. But it's curious, isn't it, how, and one question is people say, well, it's ages since we've had something out, why do an album of covers or, you know, old songs? As if it was like a B movie, you know, necessarily. And it's only really since the mid-60s that it's become almost obligatory for the artist to write his own material. It was always, you know, the biggest singers in, you know, the century, Presley and Sinatra, and they weren't writers either. You know. Billie Holiday wrote one or two lyrics, I think, but generally she wrote an interpret. And she is the role model of as a song stylist, I think. So it's nice to write your own things. It's just slightly different. It's starting with a blank canvas instead of one with a bit of information thrown at you. Also, it's really, to me, it just extends the process of collaboration a bit further. Music is very much a collaborative thing for me. I mean, whether it's with the, you know, the engineers, the various musicians mainly. Sometimes it's good to write a song together. In Roxy I collaborated occasionally with Andy Mackay and Phil Manzanera, and where they would generally give me a chord sequence, and then I would do my bit, which would, you know, add the lyric and do the melody. With Goffin and King collaborating with me, it's like they're in the studio and say, here's the lyric and here's the tune. And I say, yeah, okay, what if we do it like this? And what if we, so I'm like arranged. It's kind of extending that process of collaboration, it seems to me. So you have, like, you know, a dozen or so great collaborators really on all different people, which is one nice way of putting it.
コラボレーションもあるかもしれないですけど、例えば一時期そのロッキーと並行してやってたわけで、そうした時にやっぱりこの人のキャラクターがやっぱり前面に出てると思うわけですね。で、やっぱりでもロキシってこの人についたイメージっていうのはなんか粋なんだけど正体ですけど新人類みたいな変わった人みたいなイメージだと思うし、逆にそうやって始めたソロは最初からカバーばっかりで、スタンダードナンバーも歌えるそれが大好きな普通の人みたいな、そういう2つのキャラクターを持ってたと思うんですけど、その辺はいつの間に一緒になっちゃったっていうんでしょうかね。
Seems that in spite of the fact that your solo career and Roxy were happening for years at the same time, you had two very different personas. In Roxy, you seem somewhat of the seem somewhat eccentric, unusual. Whereas on the solo side, you were doing cover versions.
Yeah.
And you seemed like a much more straightforward,
more commercial, more accessible anyway. Yeah.
Right. Now, but he notes that the two personas seem to merge.
They did. Yeah. Right. Yes. I suppose after the Bride Strip Bare album, really. After that, I think it kind of overlapped. When I started doing things like Jealous Sky and 8 Miles High and things like that. Yeah, we did a few songs, old songs in Roxy as well. And I think perhaps it was also because of using the same musicians crossed over. Neil Hubbard, you see, became the main guitar player for me. Phil was an interesting player, and very interesting. Very good at finding good sounds, you know. So his guitar was a bit almost like synthesizer sometimes. So he was always looking for. He's creative in that area. But Neil became my principal sort of soloist, and within solo records and in the Roxy. Certainly with an Avalon on that album. And Andy Newmark became the drummer on both things as well. But I still, one of the other questions, of course, is, you know, will you do another Roxy music album? And it's more possible now than it was, say, 5 years ago. I mean, if people really want it, I'll do it. And if the public really would like me to, then sure, 5-minute warning. Okay. So I think maybe after the Horoscope album, I might conceivably do one. We'll see. After the Avalon tour, I really wanted to change, and
Hi.
good. Except that's the worst hangover I've ever had in my life. You might have to look a bit sad-faced today. It's don't mix gin and sake. Is my tip for today.
Words well taken.
例えばアバロン以降の15ビートですごい滑らかな曲だったりとか、もともと気持ちいいコード感だったりとか、聴いてると例えばカーティス・ウェイビューとインプレッションだったりとか、あとウィルソン・ピケットだったりオーティスだったりみたいな、この人が本来好きだったものをなんか自分なりに新しく作るためにはやっぱりロキシーじゃできなかったっていうか、そういう優秀なミュージシャンを自分自身的に集めできなかったっていうそういうところも関係あったんじゃないかと思います。
Seems like after Avalon, you were seeming very good. You're loosening up music-wise, doing stuff. It says goes 16 beat, whatever that is. But he likened it to like Curtis Mayfield impressions,
right.
Wilson Pickett, Otis. And in order to branch out into that type of stuff maybe you like personally,
yes.
I was thinking maybe
yeah.
Roxy wasn't what you needed, or what would have made that possible.
Exactly.
You had to have better musicians.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So do you think in that sense maybe Avalon was sort of the peak and the swan song of the band?
Well, that's what I felt. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what I felt, and I thought, oh, let's stop here, because it was, yeah, it just felt. It's interesting that whenever one of the more complete albums was made in Roxy, I'd stop the group, as if like it happened. The same thing happened after For Your Pleasure in '73, when I suppose I changed the lineup of the band. Eddie Jobson came in and Eno went out, and where I just felt that was it had reached. I loved that album, you see, For Your Pleasure. I really liked that one. But it's true that what I wanted to do musically became more sophisticated, the grooves and everything, you know, and you needed really good players to do that. Especially in the rhythm section. The rhythm and the players on here are very, very good on this record. Very good. What I like about this album is putting Michael Brook, who is like a bit like Fripp in experimental, like lots of pedals, and he plays solo recitals. He's kind of very good, intelligent player, you know, thoughtful. Putting him next to David Williams. Dave Williams is like this funky rhythm. He plays with Michael Jackson and people like that. He's a bit like Nile Rodgers in his style. Those two players quite similar style. And they're the two best in the world actually at that kind of playing. It's very hard to play like that. So to have this funky thing, you know, which is like a groove, and it's like, you know, black American thing, with this more cerebral kind of stuff, is quite an interesting. It's quite an interesting place to be musically. It's like there's a sort of uniqueness about it. Yeah.
そういう意味で好きだったっていう両国とあんたと2人筋がやる、それと同じようにやるか、否定するのを作るかっていうことは最初からのテーマだったんでしょうかね。今音楽は含めて
今まで全部
そういう国際音楽の実現みたいなことをしたいがためにずっと今やってきたのかな。
Do you think what you're doing now what you're doing now is a culmination of what you've been, it's like what you've been leading up to all along, right? Introducing this element of black American music and interpreting it in your own English way?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's like and I like it. Yeah, I like it. And there are other things I could do, you know, which perhaps I should do as well. There's so many records I want to make, and finally now I've got my own little 24-track studio, which I'm going to start working in, well, probably August, because July I have to try and mix down the 56 channel stuff down to a more workable format.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
All right.
So watch this space and see what happens. It's exciting for me anyway. Yeah.
Just one last
Yeah,
quick
yeah.
one here, then we'll get out of your hair.
例えば10年後、20年後に自分の曲がスタンダードナンバーになっていればいいなっていう願望はありますか？
Would you like to see any of your material become like standards, like 10, 20 years down the line?
Well, not very likely, because the songs I do, people don't really. It would be very nice, but people don't usually do my songs. I don't know why. I guess it's because they're just a bit too left field or something. I don't know. I don't know. It's Slave to Love, I don't know, no, can't really imagine. I don't know. There was once somebody did a really good version. Grace Jones did a version of Love Is the Drug with Alex Sadkin, you know, who's a wonderful producer who died, unfortunately. I would have liked to have worked with him. We would have done good records together. Yeah, he was very good. So, hope to see you when Horoscope comes out.
Absolutely.
Unless we before then come on tour, I mean, which that's another occasion.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, do I do a picture now?
Yeah, we